So I think we should probably get started. And if he joins us, I sent everybody a note within the message. So if you click under chat, you'll see that you have a message coming to you. I sent it to everyone. So it's just a reminder to pull up the different attachments that have come to us in emails. I don't know if you've downloaded them or printed them out. I don't know how you have them, but there's sort of a list of things that we're going to need to refer to tonight. And I'm really trying to do mine paperless, so I thought I'd share that with everyone. So I'm going to take the roll call.
You sent this today?
I just sent it. If you look at the bottom of your screen, hover over chat.
Oh,
You see your chat button? And it says, please have at the ready email attachments from Anthony, which was section 2. He sent that to us before our last meeting. Email attachments from Sean, which I believe he sent maybe this week, yesterday, I think. The meeting minutes for approval, we're going to look at those from October 14th and November 4th. And then today, Terry sent us an email attachment, which has town meeting numbers in. So we'll kind of talk about that. So while we're taking roll call, if you could pull those items up so you have them ready. So Heidi Brooks here, Brock Cadero.
Here.
Dave Cunha.
Here.
Teresa Ham.
Here.
Sean McDonald.
Here.
Steve Mello.
Here.
Brian O'Hare.
Here.
Steve Taylor rather. Still no. Okay. Mary Waite.
Here.
Sean McGinnis.
I am here.
Anthony Savastano.
Yep.
And we know that Cody is not present and neither is Melanie. So it's all on you, Mr. McGinnis. No pressure.
I've already hit record.
Okay. Okay. So Sean had also sent us the agenda and I'm going to skip around. I'm going to have us go down to the meeting minutes first.
Okay.
We want to pull those up we'll look at October 14th first.
Like a motion to approve?
Excellent. Terry had a motion to approve. Anyone second that?
I'll second.
Okay, Steve Mello seconded this one. So these the meeting minutes of October 14th, 2020 have been accepted. So we'll move and now look at the meeting minutes from Wednesday, November 4th. I will abstain on this one because I was not present, so I will need someone who was present to review them and let us know.
I'll move on those as they're printed.
Okay,
I'll second.
Steve Mello has moved them forward. Mary Waite seconded those.
Yep.
So the meeting minutes from the November 4th, 2020 meeting have been approved. So those are all the meeting minutes we have so
Yep.
far. We do not have the meeting minutes from our last
Heidi,
meeting.
do we have to vote them? I think we made a motion to approve, but I think we have to vote them. It's
Oh,
just-
okay.
You're right.
To we'll do that, to be honest. Do you think, Sean, we can vote them both at the same
You can make a
time?
Motion to vote them both, but you have to do a roll call vote. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll take a roll call vote now, and we are going to approve both the October 14th and the November 4th meetings. Heidi Brooks.
Sorry, Heidi. I have to abstain from one. I think some other people will too, so I don't know how we do that.
All right, let's go. I
Sorry.
just realized I have to abstain from the November one, so let's
Yeah, we
do
have to
them
do
in
them one at a
order.
time.
October 14th will be the first one we do. Heidi Brooks, yes. Brock Cadero,
Yes.
Dave Cunha,
Yes.
Teresa Ham,
Yes.
Sean McDonald,
Yes.
Steve Mello,
Yes.
Brian O'Hare,
Yes.
Steve Taylor, not with us, Mary Waite.
Yes.
The rest of the group are non-voting members, so I will not call their names. The November 4th, I am abstaining as I was absent that night. Brock Cadero,
I abstain.
also absent. Dave Cunha was also absent.
Yeah.
And Terry was also absent. So the first four are abstaining and moving to Sean McDonald,
Yes.
Steve Mello,
Yes.
Brian O'Hare,
Yes.
Steve Taylor, still not present, and Mary Waite.
Yes.
Okay. So both meeting minutes have been abstained. I mean, have been approved.
Approved, yeah.
The next thing I'd like you to pull up to look at, the next thing I want us to discuss with Sean McGinnis here was old business,
Right.
the Collins Center presentation and proposal. So I just need to mute myself and make a shout to someone. So talk amongst
Something else.
yourself about the Collins proposal.
Well, so I heard their proposal. And I can't remember if this was discussed. So they have their proposal
Mhm.
to cover the items, but they can also provide a variety of services. So everything in their proposal does not need to be provided, but my take and my view is that it'd be nice to have some comparisons. So they don't need to clearly go over the towns of Dartmouth's charter, but it'd be nice to just have an entity, a consultant with some experience with other charters, just to say, hey, this was a good idea. This, you may want to think about this, or just, I thought that type of guidance would be helpful. Not that this committee can't review the charter and decide what they want to present and what not, but if someone can present us with some ideas that say, hey, I don't know, about Amherst, they're a similar community to Dartmouth and they did A, B, and C, and that was helpful. Or you're Dartmouth, you're thinking of doing A, B, and C, and we've been with other communities that have tried the same thing and it's really not gone well, so we don't recommend it. So I just thought a fresh set of eyes, another perspective might be helpful, but that's totally up to this committee. And I don't know what your thoughts were after hearing their presentation.
Brian?
I agree with Sean. I think we're perfectly capable of reviewing the stuff that Anthony sends to us. And then I think what these consultants might offer, I don't know what the contract would look like, but what they might offer is when we have questions about certain aspects, then to ask them, if we can't decide on ourselves whether it's a good idea or not, or we have questions as to we think it's a good idea or not, to see what other communities have done and whether they've been successful or not in doing them. So I see them as a resource, but I don't know what kind of contract they would require, because I don't think it would be ongoing. It would be when we run up against a thing that we all have questions on and really don't know whether it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Yes, and as Brian just said, I'll put my 2 cents in. We felt very confident in the work that we were doing right now with Anthony, but there may be a point in the future that we hit a snag. And I think the information that Terry shared with us today could in fact be that snag, but we're not sure yet. But right now we didn't feel that we needed their services during our discussion last week. We felt comfortable with the progress we were making. As slow as it is, we felt comfortable with it. So I don't know, Sean, if you need to communicate with them that right now we're not in need of their services.
No.
No,
They're
they're just on hold.
Yeah, so I mean, if they were pretty accommodating, and I think if we need them in the future, it's something we can arrange.
Maybe maybe we could, sorry to interrupt, but maybe we could, if we could explain to them what we see their role as, and what they might charge us on a one-off basis to research aspects of other towns' charters and how successful they were. That would be a good idea of whether or not we engage them on individual items going forward.
Because Sean, I will tell you that we asked them, what is the possible range of fees? Because this first contract is for $7,500 and includes 3 face-to-face meetings. And as they spoke, and we could tell that if we wanted them to do these one article, one section at a time, we're beyond 3 already.
Oh, yeah.
And, they said that their fees range from the 7,500 start and they've gone upwards of $45,000. So we did not feel that we wanted to jump into a contract with them and put the town on, on the hook for a
Yeah.
significant chunk
Geez,
of
I'm a
change.
deal then.
I know you are.
45,000.
I know, you are a
You are.
deal.
Yeah.
Perhaps we were glossing over that last time. Pay no attention to the man with the red pen.
I know, right? What I asked them for was just, I told, when I talked to Mike Ward, he wasn't there, but I said, this committee is really just looking for some guidance. We didn't want them to rewrite our charter for us. And, he, when our discussions, he said, yeah, we can do soup to nuts, or we can just provide, some guidance. So I said, this group was just looking for more guidance because, it comes up every 10 years. It's not like we had a process in place. So yeah, I don't think anybody was looking for that. And anything over $10,000, we'd have to go, everyone knows, through capital or a procurement process, and it gets a little convoluted and takes more time. So yeah, and my another option is let's continue on the process that you're going and reviewing each section at a time, and then talk about some changes that the committee wants to make. And then maybe after that, you say, hey, you know what, Collins, we want to have you come in for one meeting. This is what we're proposing. Thoughts, are other communities doing this? Or we had some questions, maybe we have a list of questions and we say, hey, we're wondering about this. So yeah, they're pretty flexible, and they'll charge us, but it'll probably be pretty reasonable. You can see from what we were paying for, I thought that was pretty reasonable for what we were getting from them. So yeah.
So right now we will continue as we are. Okay.
Sounds
All
good.
right. So now we're going to move into, I'd like us to just look at the information that Teresa Ham was able to pull up on precincts attendance, or rather the town meeting members' attendance. And that document that she shared with us is organized by, because I got to find it now, is
didn't
organized
see-
by precinct, and also by date of meeting. So town meeting. So my thoughts in looking at it is I was shocked, I guess. I really don't know the numbers. When I hear someone state that we have reached our quorum, and I'll be perfectly honest, never gave it a thought as to what that number was and how, and I tried to find it described within here, but I guess I'm pretty shocked that if you had asked me, I would have said that the Zoom meetings, which were our last 2, would have been more difficult and therefore probably had less attendance. And as it turns out, our last meeting in October, 71% of town meeting members attended. And I was shocked by that. Anyone else shocked?
Shocked in a good way or a bad way?
No,
No,
more
shocked
people
in a very good way.
more people
Yeah.
showed up for Zoom than they do live.
Then they
Yeah,
I'm not
that makes,
surprised.
and I was shocked by that.
that
I'm
makes
not-
sense to me.
You're not?
No.
Yeah. With kids at home and, trying to fly out, usually I will just say, like, having 3 kids, one of us is usually kind of, it's debate sometimes, since we're both town meeting members, an evening where we're running 3 different, places to try to make dinner. I don't know. I think it invites more membership. That would be my, going virtual. It just is
Well,
easier.
I do think, I certainly see it that way because I find that easier, but I know of people who are older,
Right.
who are on town meeting, who I would say, who always attend, are there in a half hour in advance of the start of a meeting to kibitz with their friends and have been there and a town meeting member for years, who I would have assumed technology evaded them and we would be down. So, Mary?
Yeah, no, but with that in mind, I think those members are so committed to the process. Like that's my feeling. Like they're going to make it work because they're so committed. I think that some of the younger people may not, again, they're new to this and everything else. So I don't know. I think that the people who are very, very committed are going to make it work. And those members are, they're pretty known and they've been committed for years. So I would think that it seems to me with a phone call, everything else, that they were the ones that they're reliable. They come every time. It's the younger people who maybe are more difficult to pin down because they have other,
Go back to some of the prior ones, though. You got almost 50% of the meeting members missing these meetings.
Right,
Yeah,
October
that's-
18th.
we need to talk
That's
about.
what Sean and I were talking about.
52%.
Yeah, so
Where-
Terry, I don't think you sent that to me. Could you send me that?
Oh,
Email.
yeah, I'm sorry. I did a reply all. You must not have been on, but I will send it in a second. I just wanted to say a couple things, Heidi. I sent that
Yeah.
because this committee spent, I'm going to say close to an hour talking about the need to decrease the membership. And I didn't know really where that was coming from. So I wanted to look and see just that all of the previous years' attendance is on the website. The problem is it's a PDF with a chart that can't be saved as an Excel. So it's simply an image. So when I tried to save it, I wasn't going to spend more time going through previous years to see what it was. But it would seem to me that that would be one way to determine how many people attend and how many people don't attend. I also asked the moderator if quorum has been an issue, because the other thing that was brought up at the meeting is it takes so long to get a quorum, but that's not, so I think for me, as a representative on a committee, my opinion of things and my kind of snapshot is less important than what is actually happening, in my opinion. So I wanted to go back and look and see, is there really a problem? To me, it doesn't look like there's a problem for at least the past 3 years. So that was one reason. The other thing is that people said it's 300, in the charter it says 390 members apportioned by precinct. You can see just by the past 3 years that we don't have close to that in some precincts. And I know in my own precinct, there's a difference in the 2019 and 2020, because I know one person who a group of us said, write her name in, because there's just not enough representatives. So to decrease it based on that, I don't know how that will solve a problem. And Sean, I'll send you that right now. Okay.
Anthony just sent it to me.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
And
I gotta disagree with you. You don't think those percentages show that there's a problem? I think it's a huge problem. And I remember sitting at several meetings where we're waiting and
It's a
waiting. We
problem,
don't
Anthony.
start at 9
Well-
o'clock. We start at sometimes 9:30, 9:40, waiting for quorums. Not always, but in the past we have.
Okay, so that information I don't have. I contacted the moderator, but I don't see in the past 3 years that we don't have a quorum. That's what my point was.
Yeah, but 52% is barely a quorum.
Oh, I wish we
and
had
I
more. I
think
wish
the
we had
ones that are
more.
in June, which are during the day, have been more difficult. Those are the ones that I do remember waiting for quite a while.
Well, that was the other thing that I
in
wanted to
June.
suggest. John McDonald suggested at one of the meetings that we look at the day of the, why wouldn't we look in the charter at changing the day of the town meeting? If we think more people would come on a Saturday, for example, that's been brought up before. And I don't know if that's a fact, but if so, that to me, I think a lot more goes into attendance at these meetings and participation than just numbers. I think education of town meeting members. I think having forums, there's somebody in my district, in my precinct, who does a pre-town meeting member, but it's informal. It's not anything that's required, and it's not done across the town. So to me, there are some things that we could look at doing to address that wouldn't just be decreasing. I don't know how that solves the problem, decreasing membership.
And ideally, you would just leave it up to the select board to pick the day and time. That was problematic, particularly for the
Yes.
fall one, because people got sick of the select board or town administrator. This goes way before you, Sean, of not doing it. And we were going to November, late November, close to Thanksgiving sometimes. So somebody needed a charter amendment change to say, no, we're going to do it on this day.
And also we needed
in
it
the
because we
fall.
battled with the school department. If they had a, some sport game in the stadium, the same night as town meeting in the fall, we had an issue because there was no parking. And it's dark, and, you know, our members who are elderly, you know, we've had so many, little issues that I do remember when we voted to have it consistently be the second, Tuesday of the month in, October and June. However, we had an issue in June of this year because we still had COVID and we actually didn't have the meeting until a Saturday in August. But if it is, I thought the numbers were consistent at each precinct. So every precinct was represented by the same number of town meeting members, possible number.
Mhm.
I also can give you some more information because I called Lynn Medeiros. She has a wealth of institutional knowledge. I mean, she's been doing
Yes.
this for years. So I asked her about UMass Dartmouth, and apparently on her desk, she said, and of course, you guys are locked up, Sean, right? Town hall. I didn't call the
Yeah.
clerk's office today because she said she told me actually where she had left in the office. There's a census. We're waiting, and she gave me the name of the person. I'm not in my office. I'm at home, so I don't have it in front of me. But she gave me the name of the person at the state that's handling the census, and apparently we are waiting for some information from them, and then the lines will be redrawn before the election in the spring, I believe. She thinks it will happen that way, and we have some say. Although I have not looked at the process, so I don't know the details, but I believe we have some say in how those precincts are drawn. And I was mistaken where she said that they were trying at one point to consolidate UMass Dartmouth into one district as opposed to breaking it out. I guess it's two now. Is that Sean McDonald? Do you know if that's true?
I thought it was solely all in number
There's
3.
I thought she said it was in 3 and 4. And
Well,
she thought putting it into
Well,
one
we
district
have
would
to
help
talk-
resolve the problem. I don't understand one way or the other why, but we can
I
talk
mean,
to
if we would
Liz.
go anywhere, we'd go into precinct 4 because that's the one right around it.
Right.
So,
But she thinks we're gonna go back to 10 precincts.
But my question to you, Anthony, was why do we have to include students? They're not here more than 183 days a year.
She said that when they count on the census, if they're living in the dorms, even if they have a permanent residence somewhere else, they count them on the census. So they count towards our population. That's what she
I would
told me.
want to find out whether we have to do that, because I didn't find anything today, and that's why I sent you that email.
Yeah, I didn't have time. I saw your email. I didn't have time.
I know at one point, and we could probably check on this, is that UMass Dartmouth used to help them with registering those that turned 18. So those freshmen that are coming to college and they turn 18 and they would register when they were at UMass Dartmouth so they could vote in, you know, the November election, which would be for the president. That's always very exciting for them. But having known people who are poll workers who have worked 13, I mean, precinct 3, it's a very low voter turnout precinct.
That doesn't, well, there's nothing for the past 5 years. You can see that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's for
That's-
attending
and
town
that's no
meeting,
reason-
which means they
yeah,
would have
that's
to
no
run from town meeting. And I cannot imagine a dorm student being, in all honesty, that interested in Dartmouth town politics. Well, Sean McDonald, you're different. Did you live at the dorm?
no, there was 2 of them. 2 people
them?
were elected a few years ago. They never showed up to any of the meetings.
Can I-
Mary
They put it
Wade?
on the resume.
No, I mean, the only thing I would, say again, and I think about the numbers, it'd be great if we could, when we talk about the numbers, and I think Teresa was bringing up some points about education. I mean, I just think it's incredibly hard to recruit people to become town meeting members. And part of that is I don't think the message is about, what power town meeting has. And so maybe that is an education issue, but I mean, I tried really, really hard to recruit parents to join. And I do think that there are some more younger people that are part of this, but I mean, to Teresa's point about Saturdays, I'm not sure. It's like, again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of school age families. Saturdays are tough in the
Yeah.
spring. You start getting into sports
In
and
the
you got
fall,
little
we're
kids
tied
at
up
home.
with, soccer and everything else. But
I mean,
Well, we
uh,
only we only had 62% this spring and we were doing it by Zoom. And we
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
71% in the fall. What did we
but
do
the
the fall one?
62, that was
Sean?
actually, it wasn't in June. It was a Saturday in
Oh,
August.
August, you're right. That's true.
No.
that's right.
It's
Which,
I
June.
think if you have people understanding
no,
that's more
no.
accessible.
The
I'm sorry,
town
I didn't mean to
meeting-
jump you off.
The annual town meeting was held the Saturday before the election because it had to be held because of the
No, it
fiscal
did.
year as of July 1st. So there was
Right.
no town meeting in August. The town meeting was in June.
No, it was late in June. It was the end of June,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think.
It was
And
supposed to
then
be
the election was afterwards.
Yeah,
oh,
I think
I'm sorry.
one thing to think about too with, well, this year's been,
It was a beautiful Saturday. That's what I remember.
which
But
makes
at
it,
least we're home.
but also, in October, in the fall, I think it was helpful to do it during the week and in the evening because people are home.
Mhm.
And
No, I agree.
and then people are getting used to doing things through Zoom, so they were available. It'd be interesting to see if you did not have COVID going on, if you had a remote town meeting, to see what the attendance would be. I still think it would be high. I think people are just, it's much more convenient. So
I do too.
I agree, but I was surprised it was 71% and the highest of all of the
Heidi,
We
over
could
the
always
last 3
pick-
years.
we could always pick a week and then let the select board choose which day within that week, so they would have some flexibility. That would at least, I don't think we're gonna have the same problem we had years ago about them not getting the stuff together to organize the town meeting on time. But if you want to pick a target date instead of a specific day to give the select board flexibility, they can try a Saturday. If it doesn't work, they can change it.
Mhm.
That's a thought too.
Heidi, Brock has a
John
question.
McDonald.
Heidi, Brock has a question.
Oh, okay. There's Brock.
We can
Brock,
hear you,
unmute
Brock.
yourself.
That would help. Keep in mind that we're talking about the census and redistricting. The state is not even going to get the redistricting data from the 2020 census until April 1st, and then it has to go through the legislative redistricting process. So the next year, probably 2 years, we're not even going to be looking at those redistricting.
I think you're thinking about for congressional purposes.
But it still comes to the state, and the state still has to set the maps. So the data goes to the Census Bureau, delivers the apportionment counts to the president the end December 31st. And so the census data is not even coming to the state for redistricting purposes for federal or state until about April 1st. So I would not expect those to be coming to have that the 40 Senate districts and the 160 rep districts redone in the next handful of months. Legislature doesn't come back into session until January 6th to do any of that work. As far as having a problem with the quorums, the only time other than waiting for 45 minutes to an hour, which seems to happen more often than not, the only time I recall having a problem with having a quorum was the one time someone called for a quorum count. And it took about 2 or 3 days to reestablish the quorum, meeting after meeting, attempt after attempt, to the point that the clerk's office was telling people just to call up, come in, check in, and leave if they had to. That's the bigger problem to me, is how many times we have meetings when there's clearly not a quorum there, but no one calls the quorum count because they don't want to go through that same hassle of waiting a week or two to reestablish it.
And that goes back to my original question, which is, I thought there was a set number and each precinct had the same number of town meeting members,
You do.
possible town meeting members.
You do.
John McDonald, I can see that that's not the case, but I'm not sure why I thought it was the case. Sean
I thought it
McDonald.
was the case.
It's 39, isn't it?
It was, at the time of the charter, there were 10 precincts. Each precinct had 39 members. Each year was a 3-year term. You would elect 13. That changed when you went to 9 precincts. So with 9 precincts, if you had only the 39, you would have 351 members.
Yeah.
But because you kept it at 390, some have 44, some have 42, some have whatever. So I did what Terry did, but I did it on a different angle. Sean, am I able to share a screen?
Yep, hold on one second.
All right. I'll show you what I did.
All right, go ahead.
Yep. All right. What I did is I looked at the elections for the last 3 years. So in 2018, these were the number of slots of town meeting members. So 15 in precinct 1 were to be elected. 11 were either elected or re-elected. There were 3 write-ins and then 1 open seat. And that's consistent. As you can see, of course, precinct 3, nobody was elected, nobody was written in. There were 14 open seats. So at the end of the election in 2018, there were 27 open seats. Now, this doesn't mean that they were filled by precinct votes. This is just strictly the election. In 2019, there were 40 open seats not filled at the election. This year, there were 29.
That's good.
So I'm making the assumption because I had the hard numbers for the number of town meeting members per precinct to be elected. This year, that hasn't been reported like they have been in the past. So I kind of made an adjustment of the numbers just based upon by the number of people elected to kind of get that. I've always thought that precinct 9 had the most town meeting members by 1. So because there were actually 16 people voted this year, 7 by re-election and 9 by write-ins, that yes, this is correct. That is 16. Now, one of the things that really, really is interesting to me as a long-term election file is precinct 9. Precinct 9 was always been the hardest and even when it was precinct 10 was always the hardest precinct to get elected because they always had more people running than they had slots.
You had to be.
The last 3 years
a
have
seat.
not been the case.
Yeah.
Especially this year. That is absolutely flabbergasting to me that only 7 people out of 16 sought re-election for town meeting. That's absolutely, I've never seen that before. So right now, of the 390, based upon the elections only, and this has probably changed, but it's, to be honest with you, not really. There are 96 open seats. And you can take a look at,
Well, if you have 30, say we
if you
have
take a look at down here, where it says this is the 390, this is the re-election,
Right.
this is the total numbers that were total open. As you can see, this is the attendance membership: 298, 298, 298, 298, 302, and 301. So it's fairly consistent that we have numbers in the 300s.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, that's where I'm looking for. I'm looking to go with 30. If with 10 precincts, I'm looking 30 members per precinct. That's it, not 39. Or I'm looking to go really somewhere in the vicinity of 300, period. Whether it's 9 precincts or 10 precincts.
Well, the concern is if UMass Dartmouth has their own precinct, or they're the biggest chunk of land in that precinct, you've got a precinct that is given 30 seats, 39 seats, 45 seats, and no one's sitting in them.
Right.
My concern is you go down in numbers and you know already you're going to have 45 open seats. I mean, we're going to cut it too short. And how are we basing a quorum?
So,
Well, you base upon the quorum by the number of town meeting members that are actually
Elected.
available. And then you go.
Well, the fact that we can hold a quorum with 52% seems low.
Well, you have, I mean, it's 50%.
We have,
plus
yes.
1.
can I,
Mary, go ahead.
yes, sorry, because they're distracting me. So I have 2 questions. Like, one, remind me, why is it in our interest to have all of UMass, Dartmouth? I know we talked about this the last meeting, but I still am a little confused. Why do we want to enable them to have an entire precinct if they're not going to have any membership? Like, is it just so we don't have to deal, kind of, they're all in one place and they don't have to be dealt with? Like, I'm trying to understand that. And then the second point is, Heidi, do we all want to take an initial, like, do we want to reduce the number? Like, is that something we just all kind of want to agree on one way or another in the next 10 minutes? And then kind of go for what that number is. We can kind of go from there. What is it? What are your, so those are two separate, and one is a question, and one is like, what is our goal here?
Well, I would like us to continue the discussion as we look at the town charter and
Mhm.
see what provisions are in, especially Article 2 of the legislative branch, and wrestle with it more than just tonight. Because I think there are pros and cons to having fewer people in number or in the process of a town meeting. I mean, there are many other communities that have that sort of open town meeting. And so anybody can come on whatever day they have. And then there's an elected town meeting, which is what we have in Dartmouth. And what you really want is people to have received their packets, which we receive them, in advance, 10 days to 2 weeks in advance. And you want people to have looked through their packets. The one thing that we could not hear in Zoom, which you can plainly hear when you are in person at the meetings, is the people ripping open their packets for the first time when they sit down at town meeting. And you hear that sound and that's the first time the seal has been broken.
And then you've had meeting after meeting on a draft bylaw and they proceed to tear it apart on the floor after
Yeah.
they don't see how much
After
time and
giving
energy. you put into
almost
putting it
no,
in.
so that worries me. We really do want people to be involved. Sean McDonald.
In answer to Mary's first part of the question, I want to share the screen again. I'm going to bring up something that you should see. Here's your precinct map. Take a look at the bottom left-hand corner. There's your population. That's the reason why UMass is all by itself. UMass has over 3,700 students. They're a precinct unto themselves.
And you can see them in the picture, in the coloring, that little bit of minty green in the middle of Dartmouth is UMass Dartmouth.
Well, no, I know that, but can we divide them up? Is there like can they be divided into other precincts? Is there like, I understand their population. I guess my question, if they're not sending any representatives, why do they have their, completely their own precinct? Why not,
So cut it into a pie shape.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just for like, I'm just trying to understand.
5
Could we
and
find out
4
whether we
take a
have to
portion
count?
of.
Could we
There
find
has
out
to
whether we
be,
have to
there
count
is a resident number restriction. And that for some reason why the numbers were at why the numbers were somewhere around the target population, why it became that way instead of something lower to get 10 precincts, I really don't know. And Lynn would be the one to answer that because she was here 10 years ago when this happened.
Okay. So Sean, I'm sorry, I don't want to but I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so then have they all declared residency in Dartmouth then? Like, is that they're not residents of, I don't know, Marlboro?
They could be residents of Poughkeepsie, New York, and Scranton, Pennsylvania, and still
So
be
it
a
doesn't,
resident
it
in
doesn't
Dartmouth
matter. It
according to-
doesn't matter for their population. Okay.
Right,
Can we
doesn't
get
matter.
the information before we start deciding? Can we find out whether we have to count them? I didn't see any reason why, and maybe there is, but that's why I asked Anthony. And if Anthony doesn't know, could we find out whether we have to count them? Because it's always been a concern.
Okay.
Lynn told me you do, but I can double check and find out why that is.
Mello has his hand up.
Can I ask, it's probably a stupid question, but do the residents at the House of Correction get counted the same way as the residents of UMass?
They do.
Okay.
She told me they do. That's not a stupid
Oh,
question.
interesting.
Yeah, it's not a stupid question. Some of them are there for more than a year.
Right, and they would not be free to attend a normal town meeting, I would hope.
Not that we'd want to, anyway,
No,
but they're welcome to shovel any sidewalks.
easy, Mr. McDonald.
But I'm gonna just
So I
back
think
to
as
that question
Terry, as
though.
Terry said, we will,
I
we're
know
gonna
Brock is here,
hold-
but I appreciate that service, but
yes. We're
But-
gonna hold on the discussion on making any movement in making
Right.
a determination. And I think we do need some more clarification. I guess it's if, Anthony, are you saying it's Greg Barnes? That
Maybe.
would, no, you said Greg. I think you said Greg. Did somebody say
No.
Greg?
I didn't say Greg, I said
Oh.
Lynn. Lynn
Lynn.
told me. I'm going off of what Lynn told me.
I mean,
Okay,
you would have the person to
things.
speak to as to why they need to be counted right there on the map. Secretary of State's office, Galvin's office.
But so can I just,
go ahead, Mary.
yeah, sorry, but that kind of gets back to something we get into later when we talk about elections. If they're, I mean, again, because we're talking about like they're being counted because of the population, but if they're not residents, can they then, they haven't declared their residency in Dartmouth, can they then still run for town meeting?
If they're eligible,
I think
Because
they
I
have
thought
to be,
you had to be
no, they have to be
registered.
registered
From a different
voters.
precinct, you can't
No.
be part of that.
They have to be
Sorry.
registered voters.
Which is also interesting because can they get a beach sticker?
I can tell you at the jail, they could register to vote and vote from the jail. So if it's a similar application to the college. Granted, I
But they
don't,
would only be residents then from, would their residency be the jail? I mean, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here because I'm thinking about it like if you, because you looked a little bit later and I'm maybe getting ahead of myself, but if you are moving from a different precinct and, you know, when you cannot then transfer your membership in town meeting to a different precinct because you're no longer living in the one, you're no longer a resident of the one before. Does that make sense? So I would think there would have to be some sort of residency
well,
piece to it.
to your point, when I was redistricted out of 5 into 7, I did have to run again, absolutely, around the year 2000.
same
But-
with me when I went from 3 to 4. I mean, 5 to 4.
Because you're no longer a resident of that one. So there's a residency requirement that must presume that this is your primary home.
You're running for a slot in that precinct. If you leave that precinct or that you're forced out of that precinct,
Right.
then that slot is open. You don't, the slot isn't to you, it's to 1/13 of.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Again, I know for a fact that, you know, again, I can't speak to the dorms at UMass, but for the inmates at the jail, they absolutely can register to vote. Matter of fact, there was a voter registration drive at the jail
Right.
this past election. And they, you know, they're not going to be able to attend any town meetings, but they certainly can cast an absentee ballot. It doesn't seem that's all that much different.
Well, I
So
guess,
my question, I happen to have a street list of voters, and I can see in precinct 3 that every person here lives at 285 Old Westport Road.
Okay.
The
so that's
entire-
impossible.
the
That'd be impossible to carve up. How would
Yeah,
you divide
That's
that?
true. That's a good point.
Yeah, that they're all at 285. Now, Brock points out an interesting conundrum, because I would say then if all the residents of the big house can register at Fons Corner Road, then I should be able to look in this book and see quite a few numbers at Fons Corner Road, which would tell me who they are. And I have to say, I don't see that.
Well, to that point, I don't think there's that many who are registered, and that's why, for example, the Dartmouth Democrats were doing a voter registration drive at the jail for this past election. Because
Okay,
historically, it's a very low number, but it's something that was widely discussed because Galvin's office, Secretary of the Commonwealth, does say that the inmates, as long as they're not there on a felony, have a right to vote, and therefore there were registration drives set up by, again, that particular party as well as the Massachusetts Sheriff's Association.
okay, so I'm looking
Oh,
at
right.
a voter
Sorry,
registration
you just
list from
talked, yeah.
2019. It's possible there hadn't been a drive that extensively, but what I'm saying is, when I look at District 3, it's a 285 Old Westport Road is the entire, that's the only, that's it. That's the only listing.
The question I have is, are we looking at the census for the number of residents in the town of Dartmouth? That would be grandma, grandpa, down to toddler. Or are we looking at the number of registered voters when we look at the town meeting number that we're looking for?
The precinct maps include populations, the population of the town back in 2010, which was 30,000 and change.
Okay. So
That
the
includes
UMass student becomes a
Roger.
resident of the town, even if they're there for school only? Or does it only happen when they become a registered voter of the town?
I believe if they live there and it's listed in the, if it's listed in the street list guide, they're a resident of the town.
So that would also apply to our summer crowd that sort of invades Mission Point, Salters Point, all of those areas, if they're just.
They're not
summer.
here, they're not here during the census.
Okay. That's gonna throw off the census for UMass this year, where they didn't have many people living on campus. So I
True.
think our next census go-around is gonna reflect far fewer residents at that old Westport Road address.
Right.
I will do some digging on the Mass website and see what I can find out from Galvin. I will put myself on that
I
to see what
just-
I can gather.
I just emailed the Secretary of State office
Oh.
to ask that particular question, but Sean McDonald, can you send that chart that you just showed to
It's on
everybody?
the town website,
It's on the town website,
yeah,
okay?
on the town maps.
Okay, just like you have it, you didn't have to count and put. 'em
No,
in.
no, while we were discussing this, I went to the town map website.
No, the colorful map, but Terry, are
Yeah,
you
that one.
asking,
That's what
you're
he's talking
asking
about.
for the numbers?
Yeah, I emailed him to ask about the students and why they're considered residents. Because the
Okay,
definition of a resident, according to the tax code, is 183 days or more, and they're not there 183 days or more. So I'll wait to hear back from him.
but ironically, I do think our summer residents could be up to 183, because I do know a large population of them came into their second homes during COVID in March and are still there.
But a resident is considered 183 days.
Right,
That would be longer than a summer.
right.
If
That's
they
what I'm
showed
saying,
up in
they're
March and
still
they,
there from March.
yeah, from March till now, they've made it, but
They've made 183 days.
how will the
Brian,
census
you had
do
your
it?
hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in trying to summarize this, I agree with you, Heidi, that I think going forward, this is the thing we should keep in mind as we discuss other aspects of the charter. But it seems to me we still haven't answered, and perhaps as I ask this question, maybe this is why we need a consultant. I'm not saying we do,
Yeah,
but why do we want to cut the town meeting? Still an open question in terms of the number of members. We don't have really the pros and cons of doing that on a piece of paper. And then the other question is the number of, what to do with the students. As Terry was saying, if they're not full-time residents, then why should they be counted in the first place? And then thirdly, what to do with folks that are inmates in the House of Correction. So I think these are things we have to think about going forward. And I don't know if, I don't feel qualified to say the pros and cons based on this discussion of cutting the number of town meeting members. The issue is, do you have a quorum?
right.
And for the X number of years, we've had a quorum, even though you might have to wait 45 minutes for it to assemble.
Well, that's the reason. We don't want to wait 45 minutes for it to
Well,
assemble. and We
but
don't want
I
to
don't
barely
think
have a quorum.
I don't
I-
think that's a valid reason.
Well, I
Because
totally
if you
disagree.
if you have 300 or 298 and a half, you can still have the same issue, that people
you
will
w-
not show up
If
on
half of
time.
your representatives never, we meet twice a year. It's a legislative
doesn't-
branch of the
it
government. If half
doesn't-
of your representatives don't show up to Congress,
doesn't
Right, and
matter.
I
You
and I
still- it
do
doesn't
and I
matter.
do wonder too, if we should, as a town, take some onus on looking at who is attending their town meeting. So you have run to be appointed. If you have been, elected through your precinct, they're expecting that you're representing them and attending. So if you have not attended, perhaps we should think about, sending out something
Heidi,
for
that's
attendance.
because attendance is taken, and if you don't get to re-up if you haven't attended.
Right.
Right, but it's not competitive. That's the whole point. Nobody
Yes.
cares. You
But
need to
that's-
make it competitive to have people
Which
care.
is
if
very
they-
sad
Sure.
because
How do you
people
get people
care
to
when they
care?
find themselves on the
There's-
wrong end of an issue.
There's
That's
no guarantee if you cut that to, I'm just making up a number, 250
I
people,
disagree.
that the attendance is going to be any better.
Can I,
Mary.
yes, so I'm gonna sell out my husband here in probably a big way, but he was written in by, I think, 2 votes. This is going back 6 years ago. And so then like he didn't, between the kids and everything, I was always attending, and he didn't make every meeting, I'm gonna say. So he was not, like, he did not make 50% of the meetings to be re-upped. And again, and he hadn't chose, so he was fine with that. We decided you're not gonna run again. And, he was fine. He ended up getting a letter that said, you didn't run, that's great. Next thing you know, someone else wrote him in. I didn't write him in, someone else wrote him in. He decided not to send back the form, to say like, nothing. So then I get a form telling me that congratulations, there's 10 people, as a town meeting member, you have to vote on these people. So I chose not to vote for my husband because I knew he didn't want to attend. I'm not kidding. 2 weeks later, he gets a letter in the mail. Congratulations, you're a town meeting member again. So he failed to attend the first time, chose not to run, and then he got back on the town meeting. He could, now he's doing it because of Zoom and we're doing it together. But I'm saying he almost, actively tried not to be a town meeting member. And again, just because, I'm doing all the meetings and everything else and we've got the kids, but, I'm selling him out for a bed. Now he's committed, but I just want to explain that there is, that there is an issue here. I think
There is an
that,
issue.
you should really want to be a part. I'm selling, my husband's walking through and hearing that I sold him out, but
We're a small group and clearly, yeah.
I think there's a more
But you're
practical
right.
question.
Oh, Brock, go ahead.
I think there's a more practical aspect here is the 2010 census officially had us at 34,000 and change. I think it was 34,088, thereabouts. The estimated population of Dartmouth right now, from last year, was 34,100 and something. It really didn't change that much over 10 years. So take a look at whether we're assuming 10 precincts, it's a fairly equal number. We're at 39, I think was what we used to be. 34 is times 10 precincts is a pretty easy number. Trying to micromanage a certain magic number to have a competitive nature, I'd rather have it as broad a representation as possible. Now I'll laugh too, because my father, my mother, they both got written in at times, and neither one of them probably wanted to be a town meeting member at those points, but they did attend the meetings and they participated for several years. But I would rather have the err on the side of having too many people, as we're still making our quorums, than try to boil it down to some magic number that we think is competitive or 45 minutes quicker. I just don't personally like the concentration of power. If you want to do that, then let's change the form of government radically. If you really want to boil it down to a handful of people, I get not want to be an open town meeting like Westport, because then everybody who pays taxes shows up, and it could be a complete
Chaos.
thing you don't want to go to. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't look to change this number and lower it too drastically just for some social engineering project.
What a wild card thought, in that we convert somehow the unfilled seat, and we look at the numbers, we can see what they are, and create something akin to an at-large town meeting member. And that would make people who are interested, no matter where they live, and it looks like precinct 8 always fills their quota. You might get more people out of those precincts that want to be at town meeting, but maybe got too few votes to show up as an at-large member.
I like that, Steve. I think that's a good
I
idea.
don't know if that's legal. I don't know if that's feasible, but it creates a new category and adds a pool of people.
Well, I have added that to my big box that says this
I
is
like that.
something we're holding on. I've added that as another possibility. And as we approach an hour into our meeting, one thing I have to say, if at some point I disappear, I cannot get my computer to understand that I have plugged it in. So it keeps telling me that the battery is getting lower and lower. And as much as I'm wiggling over here, nothing's happening. But I'm going to ask us to, we're going to put that down and hold on that discussion. And let's move into looking at Article 2 and the document that Anthony changed us with Redline. And we will go down it like we did Article 1. Whoops, I just lost all of you.
You froze for a minute, Heidi.
Okay.
Are you plugged in on both ends of the cord?
Yes, good
Okay.
question, though. Good question. Yes, I am. Good
I've done that
question.
before.
I think I meant to shrink the screen and I lost all of you. So we'll pull up Anthony's changes. All right. So Sean, the tricky thing now, Sean McGinnis, the tricky thing for you is this is really the piece that Melanie was wonderful in taking notes on, no pressure, but you got to really pay attention now as we go through this.
Well, it's recorded, so she'll.
Yeah, this is the important stuff. So town 2.1, which is town meeting forum, you can see that there was some changes relative to cleaning up language, and that's about it. So if you read through it and it makes sense to you.
2.1
Section
is
2,
fine.
S1 is easy. Yeah.
2.1 is
Last
easy.
one is
Let's look at 2.2, which is the composition term of office. So, and you can see the town meeting membership shall consist of 390 members who shall be voters and who shall be appointed in precincts on the basis of population, with
Portion.
each precinct having, as near as possible, the same number of town meeting members as every other precinct. At each town election, the registered voters of each precinct shall elect for the term of 3 years, 1/3 of the number of town meeting members to which that precinct is entitled, and shall at such election fill for the unexpired term or terms any vacancies then existing in the number of town meeting members in their respective precincts. Town clerk, something added, the town clerk shall, after every election of town meeting members, forthwith notify each member by mail of his or her election.
I'm okay with everything except 390
So
members.
I am going to put, this goes right on to the whole 2.2, and the part we're holding on is that 390 number, and that currently it does say, doesn't say how many precincts. So that
No.
doesn't screw us up. It just says each precinct.
Yep.
But it does say 390. So we're holding, and that is the hold. So if we look down into section 2.3, which was precincts, that looks like it was removed.
Mostly
And-
because that's done by statute. So I'm assuming that's why you removed it, right, Anthony? Unmute yourself, Anthony.
So this one said at least every 10 years.
2.3.
Anthony?
It is
2.0.
set by
Yes.
state law.
It's
The-
controlled by state law. You don't want to put anything in that's just repetitive state law, because state law could change and then our charter would be inconsistent with state law.
Okay, so that's why we're removing, that's above our pay grade. So we remove that 2.3, and section formerly 2.4 becomes 2.3, which talks about candidates.
Let me ask this question before we just go on further. Because the removal of 2.3, every section thereafter becomes the
Yeah, and
section before? Okay.
I obviously didn't get all the numbers. Sometimes,
I just
sometimes the
wanted-
renumbering work and sometimes they don't, so you end up having, after you accept the changes, it's easier to renumber sometimes.
Okay, all right.
I
just wanna make
tried,
sure.
but
So, and if we look down at this section 2 point, well, I'm going to call it candidates.
All right, see, now this section here has a number of town meeting members, meetings requirement. So basically, it says nomination of candidates for town meeting membership shall be made by filing with the town clerk at least 35 days before the election of nomination papers that have been signed by not less than 20 voters of the precinct in which the candidate resides, provided that any town meeting member who has attended 1/2 or more of the town meeting sessions, whether or not a quorum is present and whether or not any business is actually conducted that were held during that member's term of office, may become a candidate for re-election by giving written notice thereof to the town clerk at least 30 days before the election. No nomination papers shall be valid unless the candidate's written acceptance of said nomination is attached thereto when they are filed with the town clerk. That's why Lynn was sending out the cards to those town meeting members. Some town meeting members got cards. The ones that got the cards were the ones who attended more than 50% of the meetings. All they had to do was sign the card, send it back. That was the nomination. That was the, I guess that was the apple given to those who actually did their work, did the duty that they were elected to do. Those that didn't had to go back out and get 20 signatures. They had to go out and get actual signatures to redo it again. So that's the current practice in place. And to be honest with you, I'm fine with it. You know,
Right.
you don't want to show up for half the meetings.
Current practice in place.
Yeah, current practice in place right now is you don't want to show up for half the meetings, then get your butt out there, walk around and get your neighbor's signatures.
And I agree with that, but I'm wondering if what Mary had shared about her husband, then Mary, do you feel that your husband actually possibly attended, even reluctantly, more than half of the meetings?
Now he has, but then he didn't. No, actually, there were a few. That's what I'm saying. So he didn't, and then he didn't get the nomination. He was told that he didn't have enough, and then someone wrote him in again, and he said he wasn't interested, and then and now he's attending them all. But I'm saying at that point, can you hear me, Heidi?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So at that point, no, the first round he didn't, and so he didn't get, as Sean McDonald was, with the apple, if you will. So in theory, if someone else had run instead of him, but someone wrote him in. And so there are, a list of maybe 10 people that went out to existing members of precinct 5 that all got presumably one write-in vote. And then existing town meeting members that had to go and, in a special meeting and say, we think out of these 10 people who got one vote, these are the people who should be on town meeting. And I didn't vote for him. So someone else then voted for him again. And now he's
the write-ins section is entirely different than this.
No, I understand that, Sean, and I agree with you on this point.
But I think also this just popped in my mind just now. If you're a write-in candidate, if somebody writes you in and you happen to get the requisite numbers to be elected, and you should have to accept the nomination.
You do, and you have to get sworn in.
Right. So if you don't get sworn in, you're not a member.
Yeah,
So somehow that has to be, so either the town clerk will send something out saying that you've been elected, please come in and swear in. And if you don't swear in, please send this card back saying that you reject the nomination.
I don't think think he got a letter saying congratulations. I don't think, I mean, again, he's happy to serve now, and but I don't think he ever got a letter saying you need to come in and swear in. I mean, I swore in to be part of this and the school committee, but I don't remember swearing in to be, coming in.
I don't
having
think town meeting members get sworn in, Steve.
No,
which is
it's
kind of-
actually, it's a card. I'm sorry, it's a signature
Well,
card.
there.
So I
Well,
think
there you go.
there's got to be something there that they accept it or they don't accept it.
Can I just give a perspective historically? This was added to the original charter because there was discussion that people were not participating in town meeting. They just didn't want to run because they didn't want to keep getting the 20 signatures. And it may have been more back then. I don't remember.
Now it was 25, I think was top.
Yeah, it was about the same number, but this was an apple, like you said. So if you show up for half, you don't have to go through that.
Right.
I'm fine with this too. I think you should get at least 20 or, I mean, show some commitment, some level of
I
commitment.
mean, you
Right.
only need 20 signatures to run for a town meeting. You only need 50 for any other office.
Right.
Well, to be honest with you.
And
I
this
think that
20 has to
requirement
be
should
from
a
within
little
your
more.
precinct, which is what it
Correct.
does
Within
say.
your own precinct, yeah,
I mean,
And it says voters within your precinct.
right.
I mean, to run for most offices, I mean, you have to get a minimum of write-ins equal to the number of signatures. So if you're running, whether you're running for state rep, state senate, state committee for either major party, you have to get, for example, in my case, I had to get 50, I would have had to have gotten 50 write-in signatures if I didn't get 50 on my nomination papers. So having a provision that you need a minimum of, was it 20 or 25
20.
write-in votes to be a town meeting member would just make it consistent with almost every other office on a ballot.
Wait, say that again, Brock. I missed what you said again.
For almost every other.
I understand this first part. Yeah.
So if it takes 20 signatures to get on the ballot for town meeting member,
Right. Yeah.
you should have to at least get 20 write-in votes for town meeting member to qualify, not one or two and then get elected.
Which is what I will say in precinct 5. I mean, I looked at a cast of, 10 to, at least 10 candidates who all had one, and then we were deciding between those candidates. So, I mean, I guess that's a good, do we put that as a caveat? Because I would imagine there are a number of people who are elected by 1-2 write-in votes.
Oh,
So
so
that
many.
would be a big change if we
I
decided to.
believe that.
Most writing candidates is usually 1 or 2. Very rare do you get
Themselves and their
5 or
spouse.
6.
Yeah, that is, and I will call that one perhaps a rabbit hole.
Yeah, we don't have anything, there's nothing in the charter about writing votes.
No. So I say for right now, let's focus on our role to review the current charter. And I'm
Yep.
going to put a question mark hold, should we address write-in ballots?
But if you address the write-in ballots, it's gonna be for the entire election ballot. So in other words, you just can't say town meeting members have to have 20. You have to say if you write in for a elected position, such as select board or school, you have to have at least 50. So it's gotta be both ways. You just can't
I
have
think
one.
that's-
I don't even know if that's legal. We'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
Brock says the state does it, so that would be another question for Galvin's office.
Yeah, no, for example, my election to the Republican State Committee, it requires 50 certified signatures to appear on the ballot. Someone can get 40 write-ins, they're not going to be elected because under the state law, you need a minimum of 50. So if I didn't even vote for myself, but I got my name on the ballot, there's 50. Someone gets 51, they get elected. 51 write-ins, they get elected. But they need that minimum of 50 to even qualify for the position. And that's the same way for state rep and senate is my understanding.
Well, that's one way to
Well,
find out.
I
That's
have
another
made a
question for
big
Galvin.
sign that is another discussion point.
So
Oh, yes,
Heidi,
Brian? Brian?
Heidi, just when you get finished, could I ask at the end of each meeting, the list you compile of outstanding questions that you could possibly send out to us at the end of the meet, not at the end of the meeting, but when you get around to it?
Okay.
so
Yeah.
Heidi, can we find out somewhere, and this maybe is a question back to, Sean, can we find out how many people were write-ins? Is there somewhere that we can, find out that information versus people who were kind of elected under the, do you know what I mean? Like, because it'd be instructive for us to know that, 70 members of the people who are sitting on town meeting were, brought in by 1 or 2 write-in votes. I think that would be
Sean just
instructive
shared
for us.
information with us.
Yeah, I think I can find that right now.
No,
And
Sharon
I-
Powell just shared that information on the chat, Mary, the chat that he showed, which is on the website.
Sean McDonald shared that. That was one of the charts earlier tonight, Mary.
Okay.
That just had to do with town meeting. How many people ran, how many people were write-ins, and then how many seats were still unclaimed.
Well, I saw that, but I'm wondering how many votes those write-ins had, if they were.
Oh,
off
I
those
see what
packets,
you mean.
Teresa's. There was,
Well, past town meeting elections were listed, except this year by going to the election results. There was a list with the number of votes. This year, that section wasn't there,
okay.
because I guess Lynn left what, July 31st? Yeah, so she didn't have, she had 30 some odd days to do that and get it on the web, but it was never done.
Okay, I'm going to say if we read through 2.4 as is, it's as it's stated, I think it's clear with
Mhm.
Anthony's cleanups.
Yep.
Let's move to election, which is would be the new 2.5.
So just to go back to Mary's question, so did you want the number of write-in candidates?
Total.
Yeah, so that'd be great, Sean.
Yeah, so I can give you, do you want just this year?
We can start with this year. That's good.
Okay, so I'll give you the ones from June. I'll just give you the count.
While he's doing that, the thing that Brock just sent everybody via the chat, I'm on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where it says town meeting members, elections, terms of office. One thing is interesting in here to me, it's section 4. It's general law, part 1, title 7, chapter 43A, section 4. It says, other than the officers designated in the bylaws of the town as town meeting members at large, the representative town meeting membership shall in each precinct consist of the largest number divisible by 3, which will admit of a representation thereof. God, I hate these languages. In the approximate proportion which the number of inhabitants therein bears to the total number of inhabitants in the town, and which will cause, and this is what all that gobbledygook, I could care less, but this is the more interesting one, and which will cause the total elected membership to be as nearly 240 as may be. So the state is telling you, if you have a representative town meeting, you must have at least 240 members. So they're telling you that. So we can't go below 240.
Which is fine, yeah.
So our ceiling, our range to work is 240 to 390.
But also, Sean, to that, one of the reasons I posted that was we kept discussing the definition of resident and who and what is and how that is the
Inhabitant.
university students a resident or not. The term's inhabitant, therefore that is a much greater catch-all. Therefore, that is the college student, that is the summer resident, that is the inmate perhaps.
Yep.
But it's inhabitant, not resident.
Yep. And actually, to be honest with you, if the precincts do change, everybody's gonna run. Everybody's gonna run. And then whatever number has been decided as to what's gonna happen per precinct, the top third get 3 years, the second third get 2 years, then the bottom third get 1 year. That's how that's done.
So
And that is actually within our charter.
It is, yeah.
And then to answer Mary's question, so the last election, you had 67 members that were re-elected, 5 were newly elected, and 32 were write-in elected.
Wow,
So quite a few people get written in.
that's right. And we don't know, Sean, again, how many write-in votes those people got, like each. Is that something that's discernible? I mean, did most of them get more than 10 or 5, or, you know, is that something we can discern?
I don't think the database has that.
Okay,
I could ask Sarah, the clerk.
yeah, I
But
was just curious.
I'm not sure how readily available that is, but it
Okay,
should,
yeah.
actually, it should be pretty.
Like it was
Sean, how many did you say were elected write-ins?
32.
Yeah, that's the number I have. It was 32 this year, 12, 22, 28 last, 2019, 9, 10, 16, 20 in 2018.
So almost half and this year, maybe a third in the others.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is that you had nine people being written in precinct 9. That's like
That's
unheard of.
crazy.
I'm still taken aback by that.
Right.
So only 5 people go through the actual process that got elected, newly elected.
And to be honest with you, it's not the first time I've heard from somebody saying, just write my name in, that way I don't have to get signatures.
The
I've
other,
heard that several times.
the other factor, Sean, is that in the spring, people were not going around collecting signatures because nobody would answer the door. So that may have a slight impact on,
Well, actually, the signatures last year were collected from January to mid-February,
Mhm.
before the COVID thing.
okay,
And
yeah. No,
It was cold.
but yeah, it's cold. That's what it is. That's the only drawback to our
No, no,
election. You know, everybody freezes their butt off trying to do something. And then more
I do
than
think, though, you
likely,
should still have to
rains
get
on election
signatures.
day.
So I'm going to bring us back to looking at
Okay.
election, which is 2.5. And I know it's difficult to read through what has been crossed out. The voters in each precinct shall, and it says the first election following any
No,
precinct.
it says the first annual town
Oh, I
election.
couldn't even see that. Thank you. Annual town election following any precinct revision where the number or dimension of precincts is changed. Elect by ballot the total number of, hang on,
Of town
town
meeting
meeting
members.
members to which their precinct is entitled. The first third in order of votes received of members so elected shall serve 3 years. The second third in such order serve 2 years, and the remaining third in such order serve 1 year, which is what we had discussed.
Mhm.
In case of a tie vote affecting the division into thirds, as aforesaid, the members elected from the precinct shall by ballot determine the same, and therefore accept as is
Thereafter.
otherwise provided herein. Legal speak.
Hmm.
Upon every revision of the precincts where the number of precincts is changed, the terms of office of all town meeting members from every precinct so revised shall cease upon the election of their successors.
Mhm.
And Anthony added his.
Basically, what they're saying is if the changes of the precincts occur and we have to vote for X number of town meeting members come 2021, those who were elected this year and last year, their terms expire right there.
Yeah.
Boom.
And it sounds like that has happened before and potentially will happen again when we have the new census numbers, and which
Right.
Brock is saying may take us some time.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That's the way it should be anyway.
Okay.
Well, just to give you perspective, looking at the state redistricting, it appears that wasn't even made official till November of 2011. So you're talking almost a whole year into the process for that to have gotten done. I wouldn't expect much faster here.
And the precinct map that I showed, use the 2010 census data, US census data. So we may not be getting around to this new precinct thing until 2022.
So do we need to go back to this comment though, that, going back to the previous paragraph, in case of a tie vote, do we need to, again, like the point is that it's not confident this is legal self-appointment? Is that something that we need to address, or is that something that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a think about it. If there's a
No, I agree.
I vote for Congress, you think the Congress gets to pick which one of those people that the
No, I'm with
the
you.
voters wanted? I don't, the whole
Right.
thing about self-selection, I can't imagine. I didn't do any legal research on it. It just jumped right out at me as being, didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But isn't it
Like it.
usually that, per Robert's rules, and I believe the congressional rules, that the legislative body permits its own membership in case of a tie or other confusion? The power usually rests in that elected, in that body, as they're the sovereign entity themselves.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess in practice, I'll go back to my husband, again, this gets back to when I was sent, all these people had gotten one vote, and it was sent to the sitting members to decide which of those people should end up gaining the seats on town meeting. So, I mean, that wasn't in practice. I don't know if anybody was in a situation where they were. So again, I guess the question is, if the newly elected members who got in like in full, we're fully in and fully voted, are voting on the other people who had the tie vote. I mean, I guess presumably, right?
That's how it's happened in the past when we've had
Yeah,
ties.
so
We've
therefore
had
you wouldn't be voting for yourself, because you'd be voting for their neighbor who is tied with your other neighbor.
Right.
Can we revert to duel or fencing instead?
Oh, I like that better.
I like that. That's good.
Plenty of swords. That works for me.
No sword.
I chose to become a Brooks and over a Silver, so I go for alphabetical order.
Hey, Waits don't agree with that.
I would think not.
Hey, I'm stuck in the
And Miss
middle.
Malone.
I don't see how Robert's rules talks. I'm looking at it right now. I don't
Okay.
quickly, and I was deep into it earlier
I
today.
mean, there's no, I don't see.
I don't see how it talks about members, because it doesn't control voting.
The only thing I would see probably kind of like a hinky thing here is if you have your top tier, your let's just stay with 39. Your 13th and 14th voter has 150 votes. So one of them has to go into a 3-year term, the other one has to go to a 2-year term. Everybody else has to vote between the two of them. Who's going to get the 3-year and who's going to get the 2-year? All the remaining town meeting members that were recently voted in. And then that would work its way down after that. So, I mean, there's a possibility and a probability that that vote is going to have to lead to another vote. Because now, once you move that other person down, then your second tier and third tier people might be, that you're going to have to vote, and it might change. It might not, maybe. I don't think so, but
I'll look at that further. I just, I didn't.
Would we be better to say that in a case of a tie, instead of being equal thirds, there will be a redistribution. So we'll have 12 in one and 14 in another.
I know. I know. There should be equal distribution.
And in reality,
I really like the 20 paces idea of Steve Mello.
is that a caucus at a town meeting, or is there a pre-meeting, or is that done by paper ballot in advance of town meeting? And practical.
Generally, the clerk has sent out the information for people to vote on. And then you return it to the town clerk's office.
Yeah, that's what happened.
I got a 7:30 meeting. I apologize. I didn't think we were going to go
No,
past.
we
7:30.
said
Nope, that's all right. We are going to stop at 2.5, and so we will take it back up
Yep.
with 2.6 when we return on December
Yeah. So I got other issues.
December 16th.
Okay.
So, I will say, before we adjourn, and Brian, I will send out an email to everyone letting you know in section 1 what we were holding on, which sections. That's what you were asking for.
Yes.
Thank
I have a question before you go.
Sure.
on 2.5, I don't expect it to be answered this evening, but the first sentence says, towards the end of the first sentence,
I'm gonna sign off, guys.
any
Fine, thank you,
precinct,
Anthony.
Go ahead.
any precinct revision where the number or dimension of precincts have changed. I don't want the answer now, but what does dimension mean?
In other words, if you're going from, say, my street. My street is precinct 4 on both sides. So say the town clerk decides to say, okay, the north side of my street will now become precinct 2. The south side shall become precinct 4. That's the dimensions.
Yeah. Is
It's
that like,
It's the actual physical boundary of each precinct.
so in the interest of explanation, I understand what you just said, but would the average person know what that means when they were reading this? What dimension means?
You can put boundaries.
Well, I'm just asking for a clarification.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so that
whether,
is in-
you can, that's a good question, whether or not the dimensions should be dimensions or boundaries.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to discuss it now. I just want to get a definition of what dimension means.
Geographic boundary would,
Well, then it should say geographic boundary rather than
Yeah.
dimension.
Pose it to
Don
Anthony.
McGinnis, did you get that down?
I did.
Thank you. I have it down as well. And I need to do a roll call vote for us to leave the meeting.
I make a motion to
Okay,
adjourn.
exactly. Thank you. Sean
I
McDonald
second it.
motion made to end the meeting, adjourn the meeting. Brian O'Hare seconded it. And Heidi Brooks agrees. Brock Cadero,
Yes.
David Cunha,
Yes.
Sean McDonald,
Yes.
Steve Mello,
yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Mary Waite,
Yes.
Steve Taylor's still not here. Thank you all. Good luck with your holiday preparations. And
Thank
we
you.
will
We'll see
see
you soon.
you December 16th.
Okay,
Okay.
thank